I think that one thing is very clear here is that we are, in fact, well represented in terms of communicating with the media. That Paul and Bruce, speaking on behalf of two marijuana reform organizations, and Russ, also, in terms of explaining and really knows the media from the inside out, and that again, that the evidence that Anne and her group and others like it are bringing forward is in terms of the cost, the human cost of this, is something that we have the information, we have the knowledgeable spokespersons to communicate with the media, and yet the truth still has not made us free, and the practical problems that Bruce raised there in terms of the sheer ignorance and the possibility that the government might actually lie to us. They have not yet found the weapons of mass destruction in NORML's office, thank God. But the idea of the really and truly, one of the interesting things about this current, the current administration is that finally the media has bravely, I think about reporters in other countries who get killed, that journalists here are worried about rightly losing their jobs. But they're not in danger of losing their lives, unlike a lot of medical marijuana patients. So the fact is that they are beginning to say it's okay. It's actually okay to say that the government lies, that a government agency might not be the ultimate source of truth. But on the other hand, it really is, I find it, looking at NIDA and part of the National Institutes of Health, and to think that this, and now SAMHSA and so on, really have become simply nothing but propaganda arms of the drug war. They are really nothing more than that. And so this, but back, the media, there are people who do get it. There is a wonderful reporter at the Ottawa Citizen, and the Canadian papers, by the way, are significantly better than the American papers, whereas the British papers are significantly more violent than Pravda under Stalin, with the exception of, possible exception of the Guardian, the real exception of the Guardian, actually. But Dan Gardner, writing about the UN's The World Drug Report, he says, don't be fooled by the UN imprimatur. The World Drug Report is crude propaganda. Journalists and politicians who take it at face value, contribute to the manipulation of public opinion and the stifling of meaningful debate. And that is unacceptable at a time when Canadian soldiers are fighting and dying in the war on drugs. Now that is, a specific reference is the Canadians are fighting in Afghanistan, where the war on drugs works directly against the so-called war on terror. Now, the fact is, strangely, Canadians actually take it seriously when Canadian troops are killed, whereas we hide the American casualties and the American people. But I also came across something really interesting, too, that there is a new book out called The Flat Earth News, and it's by a fellow named Nick Davies. He had an article in the Guardian a couple of days ago, and he says, I commissioned research from specialists at Cardiff University who surveyed more than 2,000 UK news articles from the 4 quality dailies, Times, Telegraph, Guardian, Independent, and the Daily Mail, vile, its best days. They found 2 striking things. First, when they tried to trace the origins of their facts, they discovered that only 12% of the stories were actually wholly composed of material research by reporters. With 8% of the stories, they just couldn't be sure. The remaining 80% they found were wholly, mainly, or partially constructed from second-hand material provided by news agencies and by the public relations industry. Of course, they can also say the government. Second, when they looked for evidence that these facts had been thoroughly checked, they found that this was happening in only 12% of the stories. The implications of those 2 findings is truly alarming. Where once journalists were active gatherers of news, now they have generally become mere passive processors of unchecked second-hand material, much of it contributed by PR to serve some political or commercial interest. Not journalists, but journalists. An industry whose primary task is to filter out falsehood has become so vulnerable to manipulation that it is now involved in the mass production of falsehood, distortion, and propaganda. Now, this is Nick Davies, who's the author of Flat Earth News. There is a website for the book called flatearthnews.com, and I have not seen the book. I would give you 10 to 1 odds that there's probably no mention of reefer madness, which is so bad in the UK, it's truly reached a level of being totally bizarre. Now then, the point being of all this is that the problem is not unique to the marijuana reform movement. The problem is not, the bad journalism, as I said, maybe the best two-word explanation for marijuana prohibition, but it's also the best explanation for a lot of other malfunctions in our society, because it is in fact like a mental illness that simply makes it impossible to accurately digest and process what is going on around you, and so that you see people who are mentally ill fighting phantoms. We have a society that is fighting phantoms while real dangers, primarily from our protectors, who are protecting us from ourselves. And maybe we do need that kind of protection because we are collectively as a society doing a terrible job of communicating with ourselves. And the thing about it is that there really is a way, I think, that we can, as a marijuana reform movement, can address this. I see that one of the next panels is called "The War on Pot is a War on Young People." How many people here are students, first off? How many of you are, actually, everybody's hand should have gone up on that one, I guess. How many of you are involved in campus newspapers and campus media? Uh-oh. All right. So now this, think about it though. If you were a journalism student today, well, this has to be a little bit frightening time to be a journalism student because, as Ann pointed out, reporters are losing their jobs all the time. Major newspapers are cutting their staffs. LA Times is going to be down to one really fast typist that's already going, and that might improve things. It's obviously have a good spell checker. But the fact is that students, journalism students, students generally, can have an impact on this thing. The SSDP and NORML chapters, and that all of you there who are going back to your campuses, that the stuff that is printed in campus newspapers nowadays, on the average, is much better than stuff printed in the mainstream media. Because the young people, the DARE generation knows it's been lied to. And I think that I was, at the first SSDP conference 10 years ago, it was such a delight. And so that those of you who are on campus or have any affiliation with the campuses, communicate with your campus media. And what I've talked to Alan about this, I've discussed it with Chris in the past, and I think I'd love to see MPP involved. I think that that there needs to be a campus journalism project. The generation that has been targeted, the kids who have been targeted, who are the targets of this vicious war on them, is all to protect the children. No one think of the children. Don't think of the children. Tell how much good it does for a kid to have a criminal justice record. Think what it does to somebody to introduce to law enforcement with handcuffs. And this is something that we really, that the generation that is being targeted needs to be the generation that defends itself. And you have the means. This is the generation that has never been without the internet. And so it is your generation, it is your medium, and it is your fight. We will, us old folks, are here to help, But ultimately, it is going to be your America, and it is going to be your freedom